just connecting. Yes, I think we're good to go. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining in. I think you guys have come from the previous sessions, and this session especially is something that's like really close to my heart, because even I want to know much more about all of this. Fortunately, we have Nick Bennett here. He's all about field marketing, the only true voice talking about field marketing on LinkedIn. And this has helped him create a niche, and he's narrowed it down and built a wonderful community for himself. Building his personal brand has opened doors that he never thought were possible, and he loves talking about it on his podcast. That's Rep Your Brand. In today's session, we'll be talking about rewriting the ABM playbook. We know ABM is more than a buzzword today. All enterprise and all mid-market SaaS companies are trying to kind of work on their ABM side of the marketing strategy. And we want to kind of relook at how ABM was done before, whether it's working today or not, and what it ideally could look like and how it might shape out in the near future. Over to you, Nick.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate you having me. This is fantastic. So for everyone that I don't know, I'm Nick. I live just outside of Boston, and I've been doing field marketing for the last 9 years for various tech companies, and mostly in the startup and kind of high growth space. So super excited to be here. This is something I'm super passionate about. Something that I've always felt really strongly about is like ABM. How does ABM look in 2021 compared to how it's looked before? And I want to kind of like level set, and I'm gonna launch a poll because I feel like it will help with like, are you doing ABM right now? And let me just publish this poll. Boom. All right. So if you want to just throw in, are you doing ABM right now? Yes or no? And then we can kind of start to get into this conversation a little bit. Awesome. Cool. So got the votes coming in. It looks good. Looks like a lot of people are doing it. Some people aren't doing it. So that's good. And while people, I'll let this run for another couple seconds or so. But as we're getting into it, so my thought process is I've been in field marketing. That's always been my sweet spot. However, if you think about it, field marketers have really been doing ABM for years. Think of how field marketers are set up more pre-COVID, but like you have, in the US, like East Coast, Central, West Coast, Canada, APAC, EMEA. And so field marketers are really responsible for driving target accounts with their sales teams in these markets and making it successful. How do you ultimately drive pipeline and revenue together collectively? At the base, that's really what account-based marketing is. It's just doing it on a smaller scale versus a larger scale. So, all right, let's see. It looks like a decent amount of people aren't doing ABM right now, and it looks like some people are. So we're kind of split. So let me close this poll, and I will share my screen. Let's see here. Let me see. Let me get into my screen share. And for those that know me, I'm not a big presentation guy. However, I felt like it would help kind of set the scene a little bit within this whole thing here. So I assume everyone can see my screen. Let me just double check. Yep, cool. All right, so let's get into rewriting the ABM playbook. And just a quick little agenda of how I want to kind of take us through this session is like, how did we do ABM before? How has it evolved in a digital first world? And then what are the steps to ABM success? Why is alignment with sales and marketing so important? And then let's finish this session with some Q&A, some questions. Let's get people hyped up so that you can go and take tangible takeaways from this session and start to implement ABM into your everyday lives. So how did we do ABM before? Let's talk about it. Prospects, and this is every company I've ever talked to, this is a big thing. Prospects are kind of touched, by impersonal touches every day. Think of your LinkedIn box, think of your email, think of how many voicemails you get. It's literally so much noise. And even with COVID, it's kind of gotten worse. And it's like the impersonal touches don't cut through the noise. Businesses really need a new approach or they're going to have no prospects left. You need to be more targeted. It's not the spray and pray type model that's going to work anymore because you're going to run out of prospects. What do you do at that point? It's just, it doesn't work. And so before I go into how it's evolved, think about the word touches. No one wants to be touched at the end of the day. It's just, it doesn't have a great, great sound to it. But how do you take touches and how do you turn them into moments for your prospects, moments for your customers? How do you make it where you can help them be successful and in turn help yourself be successful as the company? And so I want to go into how I believe ABM is kind of involved. And this is the way that I think of it. So I think from ABM as a full funnel kind of motion. So you take your ICP accounts. For me, a big piece that I leverage is intent data. And so taking your ICP accounts, putting them through an intent layer, from there, it's turning them into MQA, so marketing qualified accounts. We don't measure on MQLs currently. We focus on the MQAs. And I feel like when you're in a full funnel ABM motion, it's really focusing on the account level and then the buying group of that account level. However, depending on your industry, could be anywhere, especially as you move up market from, 5 to, you think of like some of these bigger companies like HP, IBM. It's like, you could have 20, 30 people as part of a buying group. It's pretty crazy. It's like, how do you keep all of them? And so once you have these MQAs, it's turning it into an opportunity and putting everything behind it, and then taking it to a sales accepted opportunity to close one and then retention. So it takes the account base across the entire funnel to make sure that's the way that you can kind of take it from new to expansion to retention. So let's go back into turning touches into moments. So the image on the left basically is about the person. And so when we think about people, we're all humans, and the more authentic that you can be is the better. And it's like, okay, how do you care more about the person than the persona? You're building rapport, you're earning trust, you're basically driving loyalty. And then there's a bunch of outside rings that kind of play into that middle piece. And so the more relatable, relevant, and respectful moments that you have, the better chance that you have at turning these relationships into actual business. I mean, think about our everyday lives. We're probably more going to buy from someone that we respect, that we can relate to. I post on LinkedIn every single day. And so a lot of people will be like, hey, they're going to associate the name that you have with the brand that you work for. It goes back to personal branding, kind of like 101. And ultimately over time, you build relationships, you drive business. And so the one to kind of many touches hinders your ability to basically build rapport, because it's not driving that relatability. It's not driving that personal kind of connection. And it's hard to do, but I think having that approach really makes a huge difference into turning it into moments versus touches. I want to throw a stat up there. So this was from 2020, but it was from Chief Marketers. So 57% of B2B marketers say their biggest challenge is getting targeted prospects to engage in marketing programs. That's over 50% of marketers out there. And I'm sure in 2021, that's even grown even higher. But think about that. How are you getting your prospects to engage in marketing programs? Spray and pray in the old way of doing things isn't going to cut through that noise. It's like you have to figure out collectively with sales, with marketing, with customer success, with your BDR or SDR team, you have to have it all together to be able to kind of effectively get your prospects to engage in marketing programs. And there's a bunch of channels and tactics and everything that I won't really dive into, but just know that it's a bigger problem. And it's something that we have to solve together as marketers. So I want to go into the steps of kind of ABM success, at least the way that I personally see it. And so when you're selecting best accounts, it comes back to marketing can't do this in silos. You need to be working with sales, and together collectively, you need to identify that list. 50% of an ABM strategy is the list. It's the hardest thing. It's like, how do you tear it? How do you get it to figure out what your ICP is? What's your secondary ICP? How close to the bullseye do you want to get to be able to, Are you moving up market? Are you selling to mid market or SMB? Like it all plays a difference. And so when selecting accounts with sales, this is a focus, the way that I've always thought of it, but it's more of a joint effort. So, what are the accounts with the biggest potential for growth? Especially for us, it's a land and expand strategy. So it's picking those accounts. There also have to be on a named account list. And then the best fit ability to be able to service them today. You don't want to have your tier 1 accounts churn after a year because you couldn't service them, but you just wanted them for the name. It doesn't look good. And trust me, when accounts talk to other accounts, more than likely, especially today, that's how a lot of people buy. They'll say, hey, have you used XYZ product before? Oh, you have? What are your thoughts on it? They're not, maybe they're going and, checking G2 and all these other companies to like check for reviews, but like ultimately they're going to ask their peers what they think of a product or like who they would recommend for a product. And so making sure that you have the ability to make your prospects that turn into customers successful is incredibly important. Another thing is accounts that add credibility to the brand in the enterprise space. Like, again, it goes back to accounts, especially bigger accounts, they talk to each other. And especially, a lot of us, we're marketers. It's like you change jobs and which type of tech you want to bring with you because of either success or failures. And we all talk to each other. It's the great thing about being in a digital first world. And then the last piece is just, they could be anywhere in the funnel, but it's more of accounts that have been kind of stuck for a while. So that's the way that we're kind of selecting best accounts for our sales team currently. I think it's important to define your objectives too, because everything that you have, if you're using ABM to do certain things and you don't have outcomes associated with those objectives, you're setting yourself up for failure. It's like, okay, what do I really care about here? And so there's 4 main things that I think are, at least from my point of view, are objectives. It's like demand gen, account nurturing, pipeline acceleration, and account penetration. Like those are the 4 things that truly matter. And then where do you use ABM to help with those objectives? So whether you're generating awareness in net new accounts, you're increasing conversions from SQAs, you're increasing pipeline velocity and win rates, and then you're growing usage across the account to tap into like new business, which goes back to the land and expand strategy. It all plays together. And so aligning on this strategy and aligning on these objectives overall with the sales team, with CS, because you all have to be successful to have a strategy kind of keep rolling through. And it plays a bigger piece. So I have this piece, and I'm gonna stop sharing my screen for 1 second because I have another poll for you before I roll into it. All right. So I'm going to publish this. All right. So what do you think the most challenging thing of an ABM strategy is? Is it the list? Is it alignment with sales? Is it breaking through the noise or scaling the strategy? And I know, as people are voting, it looks like there's a nice spread here. Like personally, working for companies that have been more in like the startup world and like high growth, like scaling has always been a tough thing for me. And the list has always been a tough thing for me because if you don't identify your ICP, and like marketing could say, okay, well, this is who I think our ICP is. Sales be like, well, those accounts don't matter to me. Like, why are you? It goes back to the MQL. It's like, okay, sales doesn't care about MQL. Sales cares about how to make money and what you can do to put money into their pocket. And ultimately coming together collectively and collaboratively will only help with that. All right, cool. So it looks like out of everyone that's voted, breaking through the noise is kind of one of the big things, which makes sense. It's tough. COVID has only made it tougher. It's like, think of all the field marketers and ABM people that relied heavily on events a year and a half ago as part of their strategy. And whether it's VIP events for ABM accounts, whether it's, trade shows or conferences to fill the top of the funnel, it's like, it's become so difficult to go from an in-person world to a virtual world, and now coming out on, towards the second half of 2021 into, okay, now we got in-person covered, we understand virtual. How do we mix the two and go towards a hybrid model? And how do we make that successful where our top accounts will really benefit from that? And that's one of the biggest things. And so you've got tons of different, tactics and channels that you can use to break through the noise. And it depends on what your tech stack looks like. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say direct mail and gifting is a huge piece, how to cut through the noise and making it personal for your prospects. So I think that's some of the big things. So let me close this poll. Cool. Let me go into the presentation again. I only have like another slide or two. All right. So why does sales and marketing alignment matter? It goes back to the list is 50% of a good ABM strategy. And anyone that tries, like I've talked to a lot of ABM marketers, I've talked to just a lot of marketers in general, and they agree. They're like, the list is sometimes the hardest part to like get going. But once you get the list, you don't set the list and you forget it. It's like, okay, you need to constantly be, working on this list, trying to, like, for us, it's quarterly. We swap it out on a quarterly basis in some cases, depending on the tier. It also needs to matter on the alignment from sales and marketing for KPIs and metrics. It's so important to work together to figure out what truly matters. Is it pipeline from a sourced or influence perspective? Is it conversions? Is it acceleration? What does that look like? And I don't think marketing or sales can come up with them separately. I think it's something that you have to collectively come together and you have to determine that. And I think one of the big things that helps specifically with this is when sales and marketing roll up onto one revenue organization, like a true rev org, where you've got your CRO, marketing, sales, CS, everyone rolls up to that CRO, because then everything will be aligned from that revenue organization. And hopefully you've all come together to figure out what those KPIs and metrics are. The last thing that I'll kind of talk about is silos kill all good things. Let's be honest. I'm sure we've all worked for companies where it's siloed. I've been there. It's like, being a failed marketer. Sometimes even as a failed marketer, you don't work well, or you have silos within the marketing organization, not only like, sales, but like within the marketing organization. It's everyone's going to be pushing towards the same goal, but you're going to be piecing it together. You really need an integrated strategy to be successful, and to kill that silo off, to make sure that as a company you have success. So that was the last slide that I have. I'm going to stop my presentation because I know that there was, I believe, some questions here.
Yeah, Nick, I'll bring it on.
Let's see. So can you share? Oh, perfect. All right, cool. Yeah. Can you share some strategies employed to carry out ABM in the digital era? Is it simply restricting audience to an account? So I think a big thing is you have to figure out, how many accounts are you going after? Are you going after from a one-to-one approach? Say you have 25 accounts, and these 25 accounts truly matter for you. You need those 25 accounts because they're going to add a ton of pipeline revenue to the company. And so it's like, okay, I'm going to really make it personal for these 25 accounts. And so, you've got digital, you've got gifting, you've got events. All of those can be done in a digital era. You've also got, retargeting. You could do a lot of different stuff from a paid perspective. You can do a lot of, for us I've used an intent tool now, same one for the last 3 companies. And it's really helped figure out, how do you focus on that dark funnel and bring that information to light? However, it's not a one size fits all. It's like, okay, you've got, say, these 25 accounts, they're surging. They're doing, we're finding out all different keywords that they're researching. What do you actually do with that information? Do you create certain landing pages focused on the keywords that they're researching from a branded and non-branded standpoint? Are you writing your messaging for your ads based on what stage they are from an intent perspective? I think there's a lot of different pieces of it. I think figuring out if you're going to focus on one-to-one, one-to-few, or one-to-many, like what works best for you.
Absolutely. That's a great response. We have one from Rohit as well. I'll just bring it up. It's a pretty interesting question.
Yeah, so attribution, it's a tough one. And working for smaller companies, in a lot of cases, we don't have an attribution tool, and so right now we look at first touch, last touch. And it may not be the best way, but it at least helps us paint a picture that is somewhat equitable. But we also have a really strong alignment with sales. And it's like, okay, you don't want marketing to say, I want to take like marketing drove this. No, sales drove this. Like, it doesn't matter. You're one like revenue org. Like, yeah, you can look at it to see like what's the ROI on the specific, tactics that you're using. But at the end of the day, if you're driving pipeline that converts to revenue, it benefits the company. And, you could use a multi-touch attribution tool. But I feel like depending on the size of your company, it's not needed. First touch, last touch, in a lot of cases, I think is a decent starting point.
Yeah, absolutely. Multi-touch attribution tools have their own challenges. Really expensive, really difficult for companies, and in not in as much a mature stage. There's another one by Rohit.
If sales is open to conversation. So I mean, if sales, well, it's tough. Like, what was that first touch? Was sales the one that actually self-sourced that opportunity? If so, that's fine. Sales can get credit for it, but marketing more than likely is going to play a part within that journey for that prospect, whether it's an ad that they're seeing, whether it's an event that we're running that specifically touches it. And that's why I think marketing, not looking at sourced only, but also influenced pipeline, plays a bigger piece, especially when you're looking at like first touch, last touch.
Absolutely. It forms a big part of the entire journey, right? It's not just about that first touch, last touch bit. We have another question that I'll bring up.
So that's a really good question. I think you need to find someone that is, that understands how to align with sales. Relationships matter. And in a lot of cases, an ABM marketer is going to be one of the closest to the sales team. And being able to have someone that understands how do you not only build relationships with the sales team, but how do you leverage those relationships? You want to be looked at from the sales team as an added tool to their arsenal. You don't want to be looked at as someone that's just another marketer that's jamming stuff down their throat. How can you help each other? Ultimately, like the way that I think of it is, my goal is to get as many people to hit their quota and make as much money as possible, because sales is my internal customer. Yeah, we all have external customers, but ultimately sales is my internal customer, and you need to make your customer successful. And so that's the way that I look at it. And then another piece that I think is important is like, you really want someone that's kind of like a full stack marketer. And so I think that's changing a bit. Full stack marketer with a revenue lens, I would say. And the reason that I say that is because, you have to have all the pieces. You have to understand events. You have to understand digital. You have to understand content. You have to understand how to use nurture for specific accounts, and being able to understand at least how to articulate all of that. Maybe you're not the one executing on it. Maybe you are. I've been in both sides of it. I think it's important how to understand how to leverage being a full stack marketer, but also how to leverage how marketing works in general. I think those are a couple of important things.
Yeah, those are all great points. Nick, a quick one by Jonathan.
Yeah, what ABM tools So for building targeted company lists, hey, Jonathan, hope you've been well. So I'll be honest, our tech stack is pretty light. And so, I mean, there's lots of decent companies out there. Like, so we use, 6sense for our intent. I mean, you could use a demand base or Terminus, or, there's tons of different products out there. I think it needs to play a part into larger strategy, versus more just like building that targeted list. Because like you have the list, then like what do you actually want to use a tool to like leverage that list for? And then it's like, okay, once you have the leverage for the list, how do you kind of use different, how's your BDR or SDRs going to reach out? When should AEs be reaching out? How is your C-suite going to be aligned from to their C-suite? And then I'm a big fan of video as well. Like, how does that play a piece into it?
Absolutely. I think it kind of having that objective set in place as to what you're going to do with it plays a large role into the whole thing. We did have I did have a couple of conversations where this did come up as to what's the best tool that's available out there. But I think a goal-based approach is something that definitely plays the larger role. Thanks a lot, Nick, for the session. This has been like absolutely enlightening. I had a lot of questions from about ABM myself, but we are kind of running out of time now. So I think I'll save it for a conversation later on. Thanks for the session. Thanks for attending, guys. I'll see you on the other sessions moving ahead. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.